Hello. Welcome to episode 289 of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for being with us today. Doug Abrams, who played Commander Hale, the Colonan Commander Hale in Stargate SG-1, as well as the one-eyed Ori Prior, has joined us for this episode. I'm really looking forward to talking to him. If you have questions for him or his career, check out his IMDb page, submit those to the moderators in the chat, and we'll get them over to him. Hello, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm just about as good as I can be. Oh,
Excuse
bless
me.
you.
What an omen
No,
that
that's all
is.
right. I played a priest once, so I'm good to bless you for that. So, yes, I'm feeling a little underdressed. I just, as I told you, I just got back from hockey practice, and you're wearing a tie, and of course I'm here. I am
I
Sunday
almost always
morning.
wear a tie. You're good. You are good. Sir, it is a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate you being on here. I out of the priors, you were probably my favorite. So I'm really looking forward to getting to talk to you about that particular character as well. But first of all, I wanted to know how you got into acting and how you got the bug. How old were you? Were you young? Were you older? At what point in your life did you fall into this, and how did it occur?
Well, actually, when I was in high school, we didn't even have a drama program at that time. I grew up in a really small town in Ontario, and it wasn't until I was going to Ryerson University in Toronto, and myself and two of my buddies, we took our spring break and we got on our motorcycles and rode down the East Coast and spent some time in Florida.
Oh,
And on the way back in Southern California or Southern where was it? Southern where? I don't know, one of the states anyway. We oh, Georgia, I guess it was. And we met these girls from a next state north, and they said, "Well, why don't you guys come on back down again?" And I said, "Yeah, guys, let's go." And the other two guys said no. I went and ended up blowing my semester at university. So I applied for the next summer all over the place and ended up going to Niagara College in Ontario. And my third choice was theater arts. And I got an interview, and of course, the head guy of the school, Frank Norris, terrific guy, he said, "Well, what sort of theater do you like?" And I said, "Oh, the comedies, of course,
mm.
And he said, "Oh, and what are some of your favorites?" Do you think I could think of a name of a play of any kind? Not a chance. So
Really good
he,
first start, right?
yeah, he kind of knew I was trying to bluff my way in there. So he put me on a probationary thing, and I just sort of got caught by the bug. I got put in the first play with the third year students, and I thought, wow, this is kind of fun. And from there, I when I got out of there, I didn't complete the 3 years. I did 2 years and then got a job offer. And I went
Okay.
and did my first theater job. And then from there, I kind of worked my way across Canada. I went to Thunder Bay and then Winnipeg and then Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. And I thought, wow, this is just kind of way too much fun. And then I ended up going back to university in the University of Guelph and studied theater there and got my honors BA in theater there and right back to work again. So I've been doing that ever since. But when I finally came to Vancouver to work, I realized that I could make pretty much double in one day what I was making in a week in the theater. And so I became a sort of jaded film and television guy and started doing that, you
This
know.
is a butchery of the art.
Oh, well, yeah, I know. It kind of was. And then from that, I got into doing voice work. And dialects has been something that I've loved since I was a little kid. When I was a kid, my parents took my brother and sister and I to church, and the minister had this rich Scottish brogue, and he'd preach and I'd try to mimic that. And every time I would hear another dialect, I'd try and mimic it. And a couple of actors said, "Hey, I've got an audition. Can you help me with the dialect thing?" And I said,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm gonna have to charge you something. I said, oh, that's okay, it's okay, you know. And then out of the blue, like I don't know what it is, I guess probably close to 30 years ago, I got a call from a production company and they said, we understand you're a dialect coach. And I said, yes, I am. How can I help you? You know, and so from there, it just kind of blossomed. I mean, I kept doing the acting work as well and the voice work, but I preferred the dialect coaching because I was always working with the number one or the number one and the number two. And I never had to learn any lines and be up
Yeah,
all night studying dialogue. I
yeah.
just had to work with them to make sure they sounded like what the production company wanted them to sound like. So that's kind of how that developed. I mean, I've done a ton of bad acting. I always label it that way in case somebody sees me and wants to agree.
Look,
So,
you only have the script, the material in front of you as a base to start with. You know, you gotta pay the bills. So Colin Cunningham and I had just had a similar conversation last week.
well, yes, of course, but that material that's given to you, you can quite easily butcher that too. So,
Oh, I suppose.
it's always been fun. For me, it's always been fun. So, I can't really complain about that. So yeah, that's been a while now.
Is there a role, a part, a character that pushed you in a way that you didn't expect, made you discover an aspect of yourself that you didn't see coming, that's never left you?
Well, a particular one, I got to tell you, two of my favorite shows to have worked on is, of course, one of the ones you wanted to talk about. But prior to that, it was the X-Files, which was originally shot here. And the thing about it was anthology, so every season you could do a different role, and of course each role would be different from the one you did before. So that was something I really enjoyed. Gosh, I don't know if any of them, yeah, there was one show called Cold Cases or something like that. And in the storyline, I was playing the dad, and the dad accidentally ends up killing his son.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and
An X Files episode?
no, no, no. This was this cold case show,
Oh, cold.
and
Okay.
yeah, and that I never forgot because my younger brother had passed away recently before that, and I kind of used that to pull as the emotional thing for the scene, and like it just blew me away that that all came out, So that was something, yeah, that took me in a direction I really didn't expect to go. I thought I would just be kind of acting, but it turned
It's
out,
real.
yeah, that it was real. So things like that happen,
Wow.
and then working with actors in the coaching regard, you'll be working on a scene before they ever go to camera, and then that same kind of thing will happen, like rehearsing the scene with them, and then you realize, oh my goodness, they're breaking down while we're rehearsing this because we've made it pretty real. So yeah, things like that. They're experiences that never kind of leave you, They're always there if you want to touch
From
on that.
to take a page from your coaching, um, I would think that I would be afraid, don't run out of gas. Save it for when we roll, What if you can't reach that place again and the actor kind of finds a way to cope with it, and then when cameras roll, you can't bring it back?
Yeah, well, that's the good side of coaching because then it's not up to me to bring it back. But yeah, I mean, I've had the good fortune to work with some terrific actors like that bring it to the table and just amaze you, like take after take after take.
Wow.
And when that happens, like it's a good feeling too because you see them doing what you spent all that time rehearsing, even though my part was to make like I worked with a lot of Latin-based actors, and for them, it's not teaching them how to talk American, it's teaching them how to talk in a manner that an American audience will be able to understand them. right?
That's an
Whole
interesting way
different
to
deal.
approach it. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I don't know if you're a Netflix fan or not, or a
Some of it.
Narcos for
My
that
parents
matter.
watched it.
Yeah, so Wagner Moura, the guy who played Pablo Escobar,
Okay.
I coached him in a Matt Damon movie called Elysium, and that was his first English speaking project. And of course, like that guy is energy personified. He just is full of it. But when he gets talking, he tends to use his own Portuguese pace for English, and then of course he would get talking so fast that an audience would never understand what he said. You see, so so that was kind of my job to slow it down and make it so it would be totally understandable. But yeah, I've had a lot of great experiences that way. That things will come up and remind me of that, and I don't think those things ever leave you. You.
Once we wrap on Stargate, I want to get back to your coaching
Yeah,
a
sure.
fair bit more. How aware were you of Stargate before your audition for Commander Hale, and how did that come about?
Well, I kind of knew you were going to ask me that,
Of
and
course.
so I never like to kind of not be truthful about it.
Honest answers only, please.
Yeah, I was well. First of all, I'm more a movie fan than a TV fan, and I had seen the Stargate movie, of course, which I quite enjoyed, and I knew Stargate was going on, and my agent. I think I had one audition before the Commander Hale thing. And but I sort of got busted twice in that one because it said Commander Hale, the commander of planet Kelowna. Well, Kelowna, as you may know, is a city in central British Columbia.
Correct.
And so I thought, oh, okay. And I guess he's an alien then. So I went into the audition and I was trying to do my best alien voice. If you chat, we will destroy you, and I'm doing all this stuff. And Peter DeLuise was directing the episode. And so I went through it and he said, okay, look, I have to explain something to you. He said, we can't afford aliens that talk like that. So you're just going to have to kind of use your own voice. And so I did it again, and he ended up casting me in it. And of course, there was a few funny things. We had our first rehearsal, and I had the sides, and I'm looking at it, and it says he is taken prisoner by the gold. And I said, "Who's playing gold?" And everybody's looking at me and shaking their heads, and the Richard Dean stand-in said, "You're busted, Doug. They know you'll never watch the show if you don't know what that is." And I thought, oh shit, but what could you do? So yeah, that was kind of fun. But our first day of shooting, we had this beautiful set. They had this massive boardroom table. And then along the side of the set, it was all like windows, not real windows, of course. We were in the studio, but so it was, and just a brilliant looking set. So they finished blocking the scene before that, and they came in. We were going to do a rehearsal for this one, and they had maps on the table. And I'm looking at the maps, and I thought, well, that's interesting. They're BC road maps, but they had photocopied them backwards. So all the letters were backwards and everything. And anyway, I was looking at these, and Peter comes in with all the crew to see what's going on, and they're all back there, and they get quiet. And Peter said, "Okay, Doug, uh, I'll have you bent over the table there." And I said, "Oh God, like you mean just like in the audition?" And of course, that kind of broke the crew up, and he said, "Okay, you get one of those a day, and that's it." And I thought, "Okay, fair enough."
Good
But
guy.
it was, oh yeah, God, he is so much fun to work with. I've worked with him a couple of times, and then I did some coaching with a couple of series that he was directing too. So yeah, so it was good. The Commander Hale thing, and of course, I think I got killed after 2 or 3 episodes, but I've been killed in better locations than that.
Right, exactly. Especially
Yeah.
with that first one, which is Shadow Play. I just rewatched it. It's static boardroom scenes that you're in,
Yeah.
and you're talking about nuclear annihilation. How do you go from we cannot afford to allow ourselves to be destroyed, convey all of that in a static situation, talking about the worst circumstances that we've experienced here on Earth so far. How do you make a meal out of it? Or are you just there like, this is the material, I execute the material, you know, I'll
Well,
play with the others back and forth. That's it.
yeah, so like in the blocking, that's kind of what you're doing. But then, you have to find a way to make it real. And of course, I remember that because the first Stargate convention I went to in London, and we were in this massive hall. I don't know how many hundred people were there, but they had microphones everywhere, and people would come up to the mic and ask you a question. And they asked me a question about, the destruction of the planet based on that scene. And they said, well, what if they had used the da 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 and destroyed you? And I said, that's a very good question. And who's got a thought on that? And of course, like all the hands are going up. And so I had no idea what to answer, but they answered it all for me. So it was good.
You are an
But yeah,
instrument to play a part. You're not there to
some
research the methodology of the of the
oh my
character.
no, that's for sure. But yeah, so and the other actors that I was working with at that time too. Well, Gillian Anderson, or yeah, Gillian rather. I know. I've known her for years and worked on other shows, and so that always made it helpful to, it's usually the guards that have no lines are the ones that take a beating when you turn to them and go, and they don't know what to say, and you see their face freeze, and I shouldn't do that, but I like doing it.
Whatever you can to get some energy out of people.
Hey,
Absolutely.
yeah, a little
So,
bit. Yep.
what did you see, especially in the second episode when he double crosses Earth and gets the crystals to help the bad guys? Were there any takeaways for you as this character? Do you see him as a Langaran patriot? Do you see him as self-interested?
Yeah,
Is there anything that you took from this character? You know?
well, that your second choice was the one that I thought like
Okay.
he's more trying to save his own bacon
Okay.
by taking that route. And in the end it ends up not really saving his bacon, but I
Baking
mean
his
I
bacon.
yes, yeah, exactly. So that's more where when I read it over and I thought, okay, so this guy maybe in all pretext looking to save his planet, but there's something he wants to save before that, and that's numero uno. So yeah, that's kind of how I looked at that. That really he was, if it worked out, that would have been great, right? But the way it worked out for him, well, that was kind of the end of his Stargate stay, so to speak.
And it's interesting because you could have played that either way. You really could have played it like, look, Earth has not helped us. We've got to get this alien off our asses. This is what I'm going to do for our people. And it would have altered your performance only slightly to do that. But
Yeah,
instead to be like, yeah, getting Anubis and getting this ship out of, our city skyline, that's great. But it's really great for me.
yeah,
And you can play
yeah.
it just a slightly different way. It's just another note.
True, but there's, for me at least, I've been fortunate enough to play a lot of bad guys or bad cops or bad whatever. And usually the bad guys, even though they're the bad guys, are just a little more fun. You know what I mean? Just that little bit of an edge when they always think they're fooling somebody, and usually 99 times out of 100 they get caught in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I mean, that was the way I saw that, but I can see what you're saying. It could have gone one of two ways. So,
When you look at
God,
it,
now I'm thinking I screwed it up.
no, no,
No,
not.
I'm kidding.
I was like, why would you think that?
No.
You were memorable. I'm having you on 20 years later. Oh man, no,
God, is it 20 years later? Jeez.
this one was, yeah, it would have aired in '02 and '03, so yeah, it's
Wow.
been 20 years. So,
Scary.
have you worked with Peter DeLuise since?
Yeah, I worked another episode. He did one of the prior episodes that I did.
Okay.
And then I worked with him on two series on the in the North Shore Studios here in Vancouver. And they were both series for young adults. And so he brought me in to work, like, because he knows I love working with kids, and and that I have kids and all that kind of stuff. So he brought me in to work with the kids and get them out of their shell to
Mm-hmm.
make more things happen. And we had a terrific time doing that. And well, just to back up a little bit of history, I first met Peter when he was here working on the original 21 Jump Street, and at that time, of course, with the unknown Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I had got a crew hat with 21 Jump Street on it. And so after completing those two series, I gave my 21 Jump Street hat to Peter as a thank you gift. And he said, I worked that show every day and I never got one of these, So he was very happy to get it, and I thought it was a pretty worthwhile gift.
How
But
could they
anyway,
do that? Jeez.
yeah, I
He
know.
he is one of my just favorite humans, period. I can't imagine what it would be like to work with that energy and that whimsy and that just unique perception, and when I ever come across someone who it's how can you not love working with
Oh,
that kind
yeah.
of an energy? That's all I'll
Yeah,
say. How
he
could you not love that?
Yeah, true. The last one I worked with him, I think it was either a Hallmark or a Hallmarkish one,
Mm-hmm.
and we were shooting it on the Sunshine Coast, which is a beautiful part of BC if you've ever been out here. But and I was a naval captain, and one of my crew had left the Navy and opened up a cruise ship thing and invited us all to the party. And Peter he was directing that. And oh my God, the same thing. We laughed through most of the day until it came time to actually roll, and then you get your
You pull it
serious
out. If
face
you're
on.
doing
But
14, 16, sometimes more hour days, there has to be levity. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. And why? I
oh,
mean, you don't. I mean, you don't want to come back necessarily the next day if it's like, oh, we just did this. So
well, that is the good thing I'll have to tell you, David, about doing Hallmark projects. When it starts creeping up on hour number 12, they start giving you the wrap it up scene because they don't want to pay anybody on the crew extra overtime. Like, because the crew is on a 12-hour basis. The actor's still the
okay,
eight and a half. But oh yeah, when it gets past the 11-hour thing, you see the producers looking at their watch every 2 seconds and said, yeah. So those ones are kind of, they're fun and they're easy, but and not to be, dumping on Hallmark, but every script that I've ever worked on a Hallmark one, it's just like insert new name of town here. Insert new,
they're a formula. They
yeah,
make
they
people
are.
happy, and they
Exactly.
just it's like Bravo programming. They just keep hammering them out. And
Yeah.
people
Well,
apparently love them. So you know
yeah.
what? You might as well get paid to do it.
They start the Christmas movies
Yeah,
in November and run through to the end of January. And during the summer in Vancouver, almost like a format, there's
yeah.
50 or more
Wow.
Hallmark Christmas movies that are
50 more.
shot. So, I mean, it's all there, and like like my agent sends me stuff. If I think it's going to be fun, I'll maybe audition for it. But I mean, they're all like you say, they're so format, but people like that because they don't have to worry about what's going to happen in the end,
I think
you know?
it's the adult version of the kid putting on asking their parents to put on Frozen for the 611th time. You know,
Yes.
there is a safe there is a blanket about it, and there is an optimism there. It's a very defined arc, and people
Oh
just like
yeah.
it. But now for something completely different. You came in for the one-eyed Ori Prior in I believe the end of season 9, and these characters had been around for just a few months at this point.
Yeah.
Tell me about this role. And first, I must know, was he one-eyed in the script, or was this something discovered through the makeup process?
Yeah, I when I auditioned, I did not know he was one-eyed. And until I was cast, and then I was sent to the studio where they do all the, extra makeup stuff, and that was a new experience for me too because they completely cover your entire face except they leave enough room for you to breathe through your nose. And apparently some people like freak right out, after like 30 seconds or take it off, but it was interesting because the stuff goes on and it's nice and warm and then it sets. And then they make the mold for your makeup from that.
Is this Todd Masters' team?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, he's brilliant.
Oh yeah. And yeah, so when we did that, it was interesting. And then they made all the different pieces that had to be put on, plus the big eye patch, I guess you'll call it. But yeah, so if we had a 7 a.m. call, I'd have to be there like at 5 a.m. And at that point, Starbucks isn't even open. You couldn't even get a coffee on your way in. But it was interesting. You could almost fall asleep in the makeup chair because you don't move while they're doing it.
Wow.
So
So you went in for an original sculpting of your head, I'm
yes,
guessing? How
yeah.
long did that tell us about that how long did that take? Like you said, a lot of people wig out. They can't do it.
Yeah, they said, for it to completely set, and I don't know, I couldn't tell what they were doing on the outside because it's covering everything but your nose hole. So they said it starts to set almost right away, but to completely set takes about 20 minutes. So and then you're laying back in a chair with this on your head, breathing through your nose. So you always hope you don't have allergies or you're kind of
Oh god.
toast
You
there,
have to start
you
all
know.
over. Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. And he's really nice. He would come in and say, "How you doing?" So
Like peanuts.
yeah. The only thing I thought would have been fun after, and I said that to him, I said, when you've got that on your face and somebody's had it on for 10 minutes, you should start up a chainsaw. And I think that would make everybody think this is how they get them off, you know? But
Oh,
anyway,
that's funny.
we were just joking, of course, but yeah. So that was interesting. And then of course, the same at the end of the day, they have to take that all off again. So after you wrap, you're there for about another 45 minutes to take all that stuff off. And that's the part I didn't like because a lot of the compound that they take it off with is rubbing alcohol, and
Oh.
yeah, it would leave your skin kind of tingly, burny sort of stuff. Now, my understanding is it's a completely different process, but like you say, that was
20
20
years.
odd years ago. So but it was definitely an experience. There was funny stuff that happened as a result of all that makeup, that's for sure.
Absolutely. What was it? Do you recall the impression that you got when you saw his makeup completed for the first time? What was your reaction to seeing that thing through one
Well,
eye, as it were? And
yeah,
did it give you any insight into the character?
yeah. Well, first of all, the other thing, because I've almost always either had some kind of beard or mustache or whatever, facial hair. And of course, I had to shave everything off for that. And I hadn't done that for probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 years before that. So that felt weird right off the bat. And then when they finished the makeup for the first time, they took a full frontal and then a side view from both sides, and then printed off 8x10s that they gave me and said, this is what it's going to look like. And I thought, whoa, wow. So,
Yeah.
but the thing that I liked about it, the way the scripting was for the prior. Uh, it was not like regular dialogue. It had that more kind of biblical overtone. So the pace that you could speak it at was much different. And I liked that because it gave me more of a chance to use more of my voice that I ordinarily would not get to use. So yeah, it was different. And of course, the whole prior outfit and everything.
The staff. I've got one. I've got one. I don't
Oh
know if you can
yeah.
see it, but I've got
Yes,
one
I
over
can.
here.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that thing's
that
heavy. You feel
yeah.
like Moses.
Well, yes. I guess the trickiest part was, when I got all that on, of course, then I could not see out of the eye that was covered with that. But before we would start shooting whatever scene it was, there was a woman there. I can't remember her name now. She was so nice, and she would come in and put the lens in my other eye, and then all I like out of the that eye, I could just see light, a little bit of light. And in some of the scenes we shot with the prior, we were in a dark space, and
You're
so
effectively
I.
you're effectively blind.
Effectively blind. I mean, that part was interesting because there was always one of the ADs would come and when we do the blocking and they'd take hold of my arm, usually my left arm because I'd had the staff in my right hand, and they'd say, okay, we're going to take 3 steps forward and then you're going to turn a half step to the left and now 2 steps forward and then start your dialogue. So
Like a tape recorder, because you can't
yeah.
reference it, it had better be in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what we would do, and even when I was like elevated on a balcony or whatever addressing the throngs below, I couldn't see any of the throngs. You know, I like literally couldn't see much of anything. And that one of the I don't know whether I should tell you that now or not, but one of the funniest things that happened, and that was DeLuise again. We were shooting a scene, and I can't remember what the scene was supposed to be, but it was all white. It was white everything, and there were big white boulders, or I don't, maybe they were snow. I don't know whatever it was all white. Because I looked at it when I went, and then they came and put the lens on my eye.
Sounds like the quest
And,
part two. Yeah, they're going through different planets, and
yeah.
he's at the DHD.
Oh, okay. So anyway, my trusty guide leads me over and said, "Okay, don't worry about it. You can stand here and do all your dialogue. You won't have to move." And I said, "Oh, that's great." So we went through the scene, and then we started shooting. And I guess he had all arranged it because it was just before lunch. And so I'm standing there, and what I hadn't realized is that everybody quietly left for lunch. And I was left
Peter.
standing there with my staff waiting for somebody to tell me what's going to be next. And I'm finally going to, so, hey, what's up, guys? Hello. Uh, Okay, come on, joke's over. What are we doing here? You know? And I finally popped the lens out of my eye and there was nobody there. And I thought, you buggers, I mean, it was so well executed. Like I had no idea until I went into the lunchroom, of course. And
That was Peter
yeah.
Dello. I mean, I think that's how he communicates that he likes you.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You are not
I
the
guess
first
so.
person that kind of thing has happened to. Peter
Oh, I'm
DeLuise,
sure.
or not Peter DeLuise, Peter Williams was strapped and bound to a gurney, and couldn't get out, and everyone just left him for lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's a good gag, and it made me laugh as much as anybody. I did not find it any way irritating. I just thought, wow, I got me good.
I
That was
don't
what I thought.
know if you're aware of the other priors or got an idea of what other characters were doing. But despite the fact that they were all very drone-like and had basically their souls extracted from them, and they were originally people who were converted into these things, and given their powers as a result of passing some kind of test of compliance. They still all had personalities. Some of them were very neutral, and some of them were more insidious. And this one that you played, you could tell enjoyed torturing people and was taking satisfaction in doing the bidding of his gods. Did you play it that way, or am I projecting onto you with that? Like, that's after you go through the wall of fire, for instance, at the beginning of season 10, there's a smile on your face.
Well, see, the way I looked at it too was when I was given sort of the background info about this prior, was the fact that he was previously a warrior,
Okay.
right? So I looked at it that way, that in order to be a warrior and come out of it with half of his face cut off, basically, he would have a bit of a mean streak, but he would also be one of those guys that has a mean streak that isn't afraid of anything. You know what I mean? And probably a little power hungry because of that.
And
Even
now he's
though,
got it.
yeah, and now he does have it, so yeah, that I did kind of like that.
Okay.
Plus, as I say, the fact that everything he said was said in such a way like the 11th, 12th, and 13th commandment. You know what I mean? The first 10 were already covered, and now he's going to start creating the rest of them. So, yeah, I kind of like that about the character, that even though I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, it wasn't about that. It was about him having the power to really strike somebody down if he felt like it.
Did you see yourself playing this character for what was effectively three years, if you include the Ark of Truth? Did you have that idea? Were you told that? Because I've heard a lot of actors are like, oh, this will be recurring. You're coming in at the end of season 9. There's a 10th season that's going to be spinning up. Were you informed that you were going to be back, or was it like, I'm here for this one off? I'm curious to hear how that came about.
No, they did say, which is almost like an actor's curse when they give you an audition and it said maybe recurring. And then you think, oh God, I've had I don't know how many of those when, you'd have a great episode and then the guy would never show up again.
All it
But
means is
so
that you don't die at the end of this one.
yeah, exactly, pretty much. Yeah, you're good for an episode no matter what. But yeah, so on this one they said it may be recurring. So I thought, okay, good. I'm not going to lose any sleep wondering whether it'll be recurring. I'll just if it recurs, that's good, which it did. And then each time it recurred, I thought, wow, I like this. I like what they're giving this guy to do. You know what I mean? Like he sort of became more and more about exercising the power that he did have. And then of course when they did the movie, I thought, wow, you know, now here he is in the movie too. So and of course it was a little like the whole structure of that was a little different, but it was still, the same fun character for me to do.
What was it like working with Beau Bridges?
That was of course first time I'd met him, and it was quite interesting because in the right away in the blocking, um, which is usually kind of done at half speed, he was going full speed. And of course, at that time, I didn't have a lens in my eye. So when we rehearsed things a couple of different ways, we got into some pretty good headbutting about what was happening here. And I like that because, if everybody's, if you say, no, 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 come on, we can't do that like that. We have to think about this and that. And the other actor just says, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right, you're right. But, we were sort of, no, not really arguing or fighting about things, but we both had an idea of how things were supposed to play out, and our ideas were not the same. So we ended up working it out, and it was kind of fun to do that. He was really nice, by the way.
Hmm.
He when he's working, he's very intense, and when he's not, he's very amiable. Just a really nice guy.
Well, he's trying to find the material there, especially when he's been carrying this particular performance for, 2 seasons, and now this feature. I'm curious, when you have a professional difference of opinion with another performer on something, is the director or the DP a tiebreaker, or the assistant director? How does that work?
Yeah, more the director, because uh, sometimes in some things I've done where you'll be off to the side with the other actor talking it over,
Hmm.
right? And then you kind of go back to the director and say, hey, we just kind of wondered about trying it this way. What do you think about that? And most of the time, they'll just say, let's give it a try. Let's see how it goes. Because there's one take where you can demonstrate that. If they don't like it, then you go back to whatever it was that you decided to change in the first place. So that's a fairly common thing, and I think it happens more with some actors than others. But I mean, I've worked with actors that would not do anywhere near the same dialogue that you'd been prepared to do, and then you just have to go along with it. And
Wow, you're along for the ride.
well, yeah, I remember Gary Busey was just completely like that, you know? And I remember the first time I was working with him, and we did this scene, and he changed all the dialogue, and I just went along with it and threw back what came to my mind. And afterwards, when they cut, and the director said, "Guys, where did that come from?" And Busey said, "Oh yeah, I know, but it was so effing real." And he said, "Didn't you think so, Doug?" And I said, "I had no choice, Gary." So, you
I'm sure
know,
the writer will be pissed.
yeah, well, yeah. That was yeah, that was Outer Limits. And I
Ah.
remember Gary had just gone through that reborn Christian thing that he was into. And so before we started shooting, he had everybody in the crew and the cast all join hands in a big circle. And he started going on and going on and going on. And finally, one of the producers said, "Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody." Because I think he might have gone on for an hour. Like, and that was,
Wow.
oh, yeah,
Okay. He turned it into a
production.
little bit of service. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, he sure did. He
There you
was a
go.
character, though.
Wow. Man, oh
Yeah.
man. Any more notes from this particular prior? Was it a satisfying arc? Was it seeing the light at the end, as it were? You want to talk about a bright white light? I'm sure that was one. Um, any final notes on that particular journey?
Well, I got to be honest with you. Each time that he came back, I enjoyed it more than the time before. And then I thought, damn, why didn't they bring this guy in a few seasons ago? And
Yeah.
then, and I would have liked, the only thing I would have liked to seen were some kind of flashback to his warrior days. That would have really solidified how he got to be or became what he became as the prior. But I mean, I wasn't getting any writing credits, so I didn't
Greg
you know
Anderson played the only prior that we saw was a
a
human.
flashback.
Well, no, we saw him as a human first and then became a
Oh yeah,
prior. So
yeah.
he was the only one who had that arc from the beginning of season 9 when this plot was introduced to Ark of Truth 2.5 years later. But What a cool opportunity. Even though you're effectively, and literally one of the scripts says pawns for
Yeah.
these omniscient beings. That's pretty, intense stuff to play with. You're pulling people around and doing stuff. You're walking through virtual flame, and
Yeah.
the end
Yeah.
result is kind of cool to watch.
Yeah. And again, in those kind of sci-fi situations, they don't come up. I mean, Vancouver was the home of all the Stargates. And so, each one had its own elements that everybody would either love or not. But it was like sci-fi central here for the longest time, and it was great. Yeah, have you interviewed Teryl Rothery?
I have.
Oh,
She's
okay.
wonderful.
So Teryl is my ex and the
I did
mother
not
of
know
our
that.
daughter.
I
Yes.
you are London's father.
There you go. Yes, I am, and that's where I
That's
was
your
last night.
daughter?
That's
Oh
my
my
daughter. Yeah.
gosh, what a small world. I love
Yeah.
London. I've met her.
Oh, have you?
She's
Yeah, she's
beautiful.
well, I'll tell you something else about London. She's a terrific hockey player. She
She was
yeah.
going to practices when I met her.
Yeah, and
Ah.
so that's where she and I hang out, well, literally 5 days a week with her hockey. And then I have my hockey in between that. So it's yeah, it's a great time. There you go, small world.
How old
So
is she now? How's she doing?
she's doing great. She just turned 16
I
the
was gonna
first week of
say,
October. Yeah.
wow, okay.
So
Does she
now it's
want to do it
dad.
professionally, you think? What did she want to, does she have, maybe I'm asking too much. I'm just
No,
so
no.
thrilled to hear about it. So,
Excuse me. No, she's changed her mind a few times about
okay.
what she'd like to do for the future. But of course, now, whatever it is, she wants to try and go to university on a hockey scholarship.
Okay.
So combining the two things that she likes,
Yeah.
school and hockey. And so well, of course, now that she turned 16 and has her learner's permit to
Oh
drive,
no.
it's
You and
like,
Teryl are probably freaking out. Oh my
oh my
gosh.
God. Well, yeah, because this a few days ago she said, Dad, I was looking online and I found this BMW. It's used, of course, and it's only got 218,000 kilometers on it. And I said, whoa, whoa, that's a lot of kilometers. And she said, yeah, but it's in really good shape and it's only 10,000. And I said, well, I said, you're gonna have to work a lot of weekends at the Cactus Club to save that
That's
up, aren't you?
right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she has no idea what it costs, first of all, to maintain a vehicle, to put fuel in it,
Yep.
and pay for insurance.
She
So
will.
she's got a few lessons ahead of her, but
Well,
yeah.
I'm thrilled to hear that she's doing good. Yeah, we've had Terrell on. Terrell has been there for me for a long time. She's a fixture in the Stargate community and has always just
Oh
been
yeah,
wonderful. So,
she was at, well, 2 weekends ago, I guess, at a convention in San Antonio.
yep,
And
SpaceCon, I
so
think. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. So it never ends,
that's it.
which so it's great.
I've got some fan questions for you, Doug. If you've got some time.
Well, go ahead.
Raj Lutheran, Melissa Smith. Is there a role that you've had that you took, maybe perhaps not under the most ideal circumstances, and you got into it and was like, I can't wait for this one to end? How do you balance those expectations for yourself and just getting through the work?
Yeah, well, once you take the job, whatever the work turns out to be, that's kind of what you're stuck with.
Okay.
The only time I really wanted it to end, we were shooting. It was a movie of the week, and one of the last scenes, I was a bad guy and I'm holding somebody captive, and we're at this airport. And the plot was that I'm trying to get this girl onto this jet plane and escape with her, and we're going to ransom her and all the whole,
Sounds like a charming
And
guy.
yeah, well, no, yeah, thank you. And they had a real jet engine set up on whatever they do mechanical work on jet engines for. And they fired up the jet engine, and then, I'm there with this girl, and they're actually blowing all the force of this jet engine. And I'm not kidding you. Not only did it, we realized afterwards it was burning our skin, but the breathing the fumes from that thing, I really after the second take, I said, guys, I'm gonna pass out in a second
Yeah.
here. And the poor girl was quite sick, and I thought, nobody is thinking this through. You know what I mean? Like,
No, just get a fan blowing on us or something.
yeah,
Your hair will it'll really be noticed on your hair. I mean, just
yeah,
fix it that in post.
yeah. So that was the one that stands out most in my mind.
Wow,
But
talk about not thinking about the talent.
yeah, and we had an episode. What was that show called? Millennium.
Okay.
And underneath the streets of Vancouver, there are all these tunnels, big, huge tunnels that they used to have an underground railway through there. And we were shooting in these underground tunnels in Millennium, and we were
Mhm.
way the way in there. And all of the crew were wearing masks, but like pandemic type masks. And of course, myself as one of the actors was not wearing a mask. And when they turned the lights on, all you could see was all this stuff floating around in the air. And of course, we're stuck there breathing it while we're doing all these scenes. And oh God, I'm trying to remember the actor's name who was the lead on that.
Oh,
But
Millennium.
yeah,
I can get that for you in 10 seconds.
yeah, okay, because I got to tell you a funny story.
It
Uh,
was Lance
it's Henry.
Henriksen. Oh my
Yes,
gosh, what a
yeah.
great guy.
So, well, okay,
Oh
but
well, okay.
no, no, no. He was a
Okay,
great
okay.
guy, but he was also in Seinfeld terms, he was a low talker. Okay,
So you really
so
couldn't hear what he's
anyway, we're
trying to
doing
say?
it. The last scene of the night, and we're like this far apart, and we're doing the scene, and so he's going. Like that.
Yeah,
And
I'll wear the puffy shirt.
yeah, exactly. And I had, even though I knew the dialogue, I thought I can't hear a friggin' word he's saying. So,
Yeah, I can see that.
you know, so in response, I just went, and he looked at me like, what? And I could
That's
see
funny.
the boom mic start bobbing because the guy holding the boom mic was trying not to laugh. And, but I just thought, for God's sake, man, if I can't hear you, so I had to do that to him.
Oh, that's funny. That's really
Uh,
great.
I couldn't resist that.
Oh,
But
that's good.
yeah, but I was so glad to get out of that tunnel. I loved doing that show. That show only lasted 2 seasons, and yet I thought, a terrific show. It was all about serial killers
Yeah.
and tracking them down. And apparently, the first season, the reaction to it was so intense that when we started the second season, and everybody got a T-shirt that says "Millennium Season 2, 80% less serial killers." And I thought,
Wow.
wow, yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
I guess they had to tone it down.
It's the
But
late 90s.
yeah, yeah. Now, of course, it wouldn't make any difference
No,
whatsoever.
no, not at
As
all.
I- It's too intense for mainstream television. Better give it to Netflix. So, you know,
Right.
yeah,
A Ryan Murphy production. No.
there you go. Yeah.
Chop Low wants to know, did you have any stories working with Richard Dean Anderson?
Yes.
Was he any could you tell he was a particular energy even across a boardroom table? A very
Yes.
nice boardroom table?
Yeah. What was the other series that he was a lead
MacGyver,
on?
Legend.
MacGyver, thank you.
Yeah.
That was where the story, and
Okay.
it's kind of not a great story because other than that, when I worked with him on Stargate, he was nice, except that the first scene we shot his side of the scene first, which is very common. You always shoot the number one. But then he went to his trailer and his stand-in read his lines.
Dan Shay?
And yeah. And no, 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 not
Not
Dan
at the
Shay.
time?
He
Okay.
was no, Dan Shay was his stunt
Stunt double.
guy.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember his name, but
Okay.
he really nice guy. But anyway, on the MacGyver thing, we had all had a really early, like 6:30 call. We're all waiting and stuff like that. And there was a little girl there from New Zealand, and she was on the Make-A-Wish program. And her wish was to meet MacGyver. Well, we kept getting say, hey, we're going to flip scene, da da da. We're going to do that one now because Richard's tied up doing something. And so it just went on. And the little girl was there with her mom, and we everything between takes, we were all talking to them. They were so nice, and she was the sweetest little thing. She looked about 7, but she was 13. She was the tiniest little girl. And anyway, when he finally got there, and they said, "Oh, Richard, the little girl from Make-A-Wish is here," and he went, yeah, okay, let's go. Let's get this done. And I thought, whoa, like pretty cold. And so he went over and did the pictures and the smile and all that, and then left. And that was what they had waited for all day. That
Wow.
I that I didn't like. And like I say, I don't mean to speak badly of the gentleman, but on that particular occasion, I just thought,
He was having a bad day.
he
Yeah.
was having a bad day, but and there are times when we all have bad days and we end up projecting sometimes when we shouldn't. And that was a time that it definitely shouldn't have been projected onto that little girl.
Did the little girl register that, or do you think that, her wish was successfully made?
I think no, you could tell, that both she and her mom expected more, but they were so nice about it. They
Yeah.
said, "Oh, no, no, he's very busy and everything." And I thought, sometimes you can't be too busy. You've got
Yeah.
to take a chunk out of your own life and
Park it.
relate to someone else. Yeah, yeah. So,
Wow.
you know. However,
Well,
that's that. And although things like that tend to stick in your mind, and that one did. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Lockwatcher, how did you get your video game voice acting to come
Oh,
about? Apparently, you had a major role in the Godfather series. I was rewatching your episodes, and I got to tell you, Doug, my first reaction was, "Damn, I hope he does audiobooks because I want to listen to
oh.
him." This this
I
voice
have
that you
friends who,
have, it's nothing insubstantial, Doug.
well, I don't know. It's just my voice. I
Well, you've
can't,
been blessed with a great instrument.
well, yeah, and it's been fun to be able to use it. Like, but referring to the Godfather games, we were at Sharp Sound Studio, and which is one of the voice studio recording
Yeah.
studios here. And they do a lot of shows, and I've done a lot of work there. And we had a group, a Walla group, uh, that Alistair Abel. I'm not sure if you know Alistair at all,
No.
but anyway, he's had what in LA they call the Loop Group. We just didn't call ourselves anything. We just go and have fun doing Walla. And I just fooling around one day, and uh, I think it was Peter Benson had said something, and I said, "No, Peter, no, don't, Mexicans." And he said, "Oh, are you going to those Godfather auditions tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I didn't know anything about him." And so he said, "Oh, hey, listen, I'm going to phone Abel." And
Yeah.
so, so he got me in, and I went to where they were doing the auditions, and of course, out in the parking lot, it's all the voice guys from Vancouver, and they're all out there
Of course.
doing their Godfather versions. And I thought, what am I doing here? But I was the last guy to go in, and Peter Rubin, the guy that was directing the game, they gave me these sides, so I went in and I did the scene, and he said, "Oh, hey, listen, are you familiar with the movie at all?" And I went, "Duh." So he said, "Okay, well, I don't have any dialogue for it, but could we improv, the scene where da 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 da." So I improved a few scenes for him, and I thought, well, that went pretty well. And he said, "Okay, great. What other characters did you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, well, I didn't know I could do other characters." And he said, "Oh, well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it."
Sounds like he's
So,
he's got an early finish to his day. Let's hang out a little bit.
well, yeah. And so I got a call the very next day, and they said, "Well, they want to cast you as Don Corleone." And I
My
thought, wow,
God.
Yeah, and then the day after that, I got a call saying it was from the production company saying, "Oh, hey, listen, we need a dialect coach for the New
Wow.
York accents." And I said, "Oh, okay, well that's kind of cool. I'm going to be there anyway." Oh, what are you doing? And I told them, and they said, "Oh, okay, that's great." And then I think, wait a minute, did I shoot myself in the foot here? That that they're only going to have to pay me for one job and not two, but they didn't. They were very good about it.
All because
And
of an
then
offhand impression that you made to a friend.
exactly,
My
that's all it was.
God.
Yeah,
What a
and
butterfly
then
effect.
we went in to do the recordings, and of course I was in the booth with Peter and the guy doing the recording. And first of all, I think it was Clemenza, and he said, "Look at this. That's not what you do. You think you could do Clemenza?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. If you want, I'll give it a shot." So anyway, I ended up doing Clemenza. So then the next the next one was McCluskey, the big cop that breaks Michael's jaw. And that wasn't working out either. And he said, "Do you think you could do that one?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I could do that one." But so that went on and on. So I ended up doing The Godfather, Clemenza, McCluskey, and Waltz, the Hollywood producer. She's the best piece of ass I've ever had. And, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Man,
So,
all these different players. If you're
yeah.
bringing if you are enhancing a performance,
Hmm.
I'm sorry to the other actor, but you got what it takes, man. On my daughter's wedding day. So, that's there you go. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great fun. And and of course the procedure was so much different then.
Mm,
Now, when you go to do the mocap for it,
yeah.
you still wear the same mocap outfit, but they have a little camera that comes around about that big in front of
Hmm.
your face and records your whole face. But at the time when we did The Godfather, they would you'd go in and they put 85 markers on your face, and you did it one line at a time. And you had to start in a neutral position and then go, "What do you mean?" And then back to a neutral position, cut, and then do the next line. So the weird part about it was that you never heard the other guy's dialogue. You just have to kind of imagine how they were delivering it and then respond that way. So we were like the very first Godfather game, we were 18 months doing
Wow.
that. Yeah. But because of how slow the process was.
Wow. That's absolutely wild. 2006. I got to be honest with you, Doug. I didn't realize that this came out. This is really cool.
Oh,
I'm going to have to go and check it out now because this is kind of something else.
yeah,
So,
that was fun. And then we did, I think there was Godfather, Godfather 2, Godfather 3, like all
yeah.
different games.
Wow.
So, and then from that, oddly enough, I got a call from another one of Electronic Arts teams.
Mhm.
They work in teams and all over Canada and all over the
Mhm.
US, mainly the US. But we have a big studio here in
Mhm.
Vancouver as well. And I got a call from this producer was calling me from Florida. And he said, "So I understand you're the guy who did The Godfather." I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, we're going to do Superman. So we want you to play Superman's father in that." And I
Of
thought, "Oh,
course.
yeah." So I thought, "Oh, good. Okay." So
Thank you, Marlon. My
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, I know. And we did recorded the whole thing in well, like I wasn't doing the mocap because they were doing that in Florida, of course, but I did all the vocal stuff in I think 7 or 8 days. And then I guess it was 3 days later, I got a call from the same producer, and he said, "Hey, Doug, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but we can't use any of that. Sony is not going to release your voice that you did for The Godfather, so I'm so sorry. But we're going to record the whole thing again, just using your own voice." And I thought, "Oh, okay, well,
You mean
I guess it's
you mean
a
you're
bit
gonna
of a
have to
kick in
pay
the
me
butt,
more
but." Yeah, I know. Damn it,
Wow.
this has got to stop.
Those
Yeah.
contracts, man, I'll tell you, they,
Yeah.
they lead to some interesting side effects.
Yeah,
So,
it can, well, it can and it does. And plus there was a lot of characters in the original Godfather because of the setting in New York. So they wanted them to have just a little bit of that New York flavor, get it down there. So I got to coach the actors that had to do that stuff too, which was a lot of fun.
wow.
Yeah.
Uh, Before I want to go into more of your coaching in a moment here, if you've still got time with me.
Yeah, go. Like I said, hockey
Okay.
later this afternoon. So
Christian wanted to know your. I don't know if you knew, but your leader in for the Priors was Julian Sands, who played a character called the Doci. Did you ever meet Julian?
no, I didn't
Ah,
actually.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of. I was the lone prior at in all the episodes that I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask though. I'm glad Christian brought it up because that was what a what a major loss to the acting community. Just an extraordinary talent. So
Yeah. Yeah.
can
It's yeah.
right? Can you tell me? I love teaching. It's a passion that my father and I share. He was a flight instructor for a long time, and I had an opportunity a few years ago to start more or less instructing people of my own in a different medium, and I didn't realize how rewarding imparting knowledge was
Mhm.
in a number of different forms. Tell me about how coaching fulfills you.
Well, backing up one step, I also, well, when I first came to Vancouver, just before that, I had worked at two different theaters in Edmonton, Alberta, the Citadel Theater and Theater Northwest. And we started the outdoor Shakespeare Festival there. And Christopher Gaze, who's another actor, when we came to Vancouver, he started the Vancouver Shakespeare Festival, which has been going for I don't know how many years now, very successfully. And so it was one of those things that just like it's beginning of sort of evolving that because I was also teaching at the Citadel at the same time, just community acting classes. But when they asked me about it, I said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'd like to do that." But I don't want to do kids classes because I'll be I'd have to be way too careful not to be dropping F-bombs on them and stuff like that. But so yeah,
Oh, come on.
so
What could possibly go wrong?
yeah, exactly. Well, so I ended up doing adult classes, and of course, that when it's an adult class, I feel I can talk to them on an adult level,
Yeah.
and it went really successfully well. And then when I came to Vancouver, another actor, Alan Lysell, and I started up the Arts Club, which is one of the main theaters here in Vancouver, and we started up and ran an acting school for 11 years. And so teaching was a very regular part of my life, apart from the acting and voice work and all that stuff. And then when we finished that, I also taught part-time at Capilano University here. And I worked with the third year graduating students
Mm.
and taught them dialect. So, that was a great fun time for me. And I was doing the dialect coaching at the same time on set. So it all, kind of fit together really nicely that way. And I love teaching too because the only thing I didn't like, the union, UBCP Actors Union here, uh, I went in and did, I think only 3 times I did classes for them. But the part I didn't like is they would have 20 people in the class, all working on the same dialect. And you could only go as fast as the slowest person. So for part of the class, it was the right pace. And for part of the class, it was like, oh, come on. You know what I mean? Let's get moving. So I prefer now, I do a lot of Zoom coaching. I coach actors in the UK and Australia and New Zealand.
You don't feel cut
Uh,
off from them?
Well, when I'm coaching on Zoom, I'm doing one-on-one, and
Right.
so we can go as fast as they can assimilate and reproduce what you're trying to teach them.
Okay.
So it becomes really interesting that way because some days I'll be working with four different actors all on different dialects.
Okay.
For me, that makes it, first of all, more exciting and more challenging as well.
So
Because
Zoom
I
has been a
never
blessing
say,
over a curse for you. That's good to
well,
hear.
yes, but I mean more so post-pandemic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when the pandemic started, as you well know,
Yeah.
like here, and I'm sure pretty much stateside as well, everything stopped.
Hmm.
And then, of course, then we had the writer's strike. Then we had
Yeah.
the actors' strike. And
Yeah.
so nothing ever will come back to what it was like pre-pandemic. Like I mean, now everything is self-taping for actors. There's no more going in the room until like if it's a major production and they want you to come and do screen testing and that kind of thing, that's different. But other than that, it's all self-taping with no feedback. So actors could do a really great self-tape, but they're never going to find out whether it was a really good self-tape.
Right.
So there's a real downside to that. So that's what I like about the one-on-one Zoom things, because that way I can not only hear what they're doing, I can watch what they're doing. Like, because dialect is very much about where they place their physical instrument. The dialect, as I always explain to people, it's not about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different approach to that. And once you can teach someone where all the vowel sounds have to come from, the rest becomes a little simple to add it together like that. So,
A
you
performer
know,
deserves to get notes. If they're
yeah,
spending 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 hours on a tape and sending it off into the ether with two or 300 other tapes to only get 30 seconds of it watched and to not get an impression of, okay, where can I steer this performance? I have 1,000 different micro directions I can steer the performance. I just get to pick one.
yeah,
It's it could potentially pull your hair out.
yeah. And there's now another generation of actors who never experienced the room. Like I'd go and we always used to call it the seven usual suspects. I'd see the same guys. We'd always be auditioning for the same roles, and we always knew one of us was going to get it. And when you're in the room, the feedback is instantaneous.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, this time I want you to try this, or let's try this way. Let's do this, that. So even if you don't get the role, you know that you had a good shot at it and that you're likely to get called back for another opportunity with the same producers and director and whatnot. So, but with self-taping, like now, my agent sends me stuff. If it looks like it'll be a fun thing to do, I'll do it. But I hold virtually no expectation of getting the role. It just gives me something to do
That's
in
true.
between.
But you can't
Uh,
demonstrate how you take a note. That's
oh,
the thing because
yeah,
you don't get the opportunity for feedback,
no,
to
exactly.
pivot a
Whereas, and
performance.
yeah, and which is the other thing I like about one-on-one coaching, because it's instant feedback, and you can stop in the middle of something and explain why you're stopping. You know what I mean? Whereas, like you say, there are people who spend a day doing a self-tape, and usually 9 times out of 10, I'm sure the first one they did was probably the best one. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
energy changes the more times you do it,
Yeah.
or you rethink things to the
Right.
point where, like, what is the point at
You'll
that time?
always find another interpretation, but is another interpretation the right interpretation? Maybe your instincts were right the first time
Yeah,
around. And
yeah,
you
and I
all you
think
do is just get to sit and stew at home.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, well, that's that's kind of not talking out of class here, but that's what I always tell Teryl all the time. I say, look, you did it. I help her tape a lot of her auditions and stuff, and she works a lot. She's a terrific actor.
She's working all the time. She's doing something
Yeah.
right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
she's really good. So, Yes, you don't get to see her auditions, but I keep telling her, I said, why, I don't know why they don't cast your reader. The guy's great, you know? But
He has
anyway,
his job.
yeah. But I'll tell her, like I say that I don't know what you could do to make that any better, because like she'll say, "Do you think I should do another one?" And I said,
Yeah.
"Happily do another one if you want."
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know what you could do to make that any better. That had like energy that was right there. And it's the same thing for someone who works as much as she does. It's very frustrating not to ever hear back about it, you know? But it's another thing too, because things slowed down so much. We're back about 15 years ago. Like even the little rules were all cast in LA, and then the actors would fly up and do it, and da da da. And we're kind of back to that now. They have to do the audition process, but man, there's a lot of good actors in Vancouver that are not working, uh, and the roles are all going. They can get away with it because they can say we couldn't find anybody there we liked, so we had to cast it in L.A. You
Yeah,
know,
that's just a get out of jail free card. I heard
oh
that. I've heard a lot of you say that a lot. They
yeah,
almost
and
like they get they recruit or they send out a signal to the Vancouver acting pool because they have to.
yeah,
Well, we want to get
exactly.
an international option. And I mean, how often are you guys really even being considered under those circumstances? It's someone who's saying, we need to do this. Let's just do it. And all
Yeah.
that work for what?
Yeah, and the submission process, as you said, it used to be you and the seven suspects. Now it's you and the 70 suspects. And casting directors now here, and I'm sure maybe in LA too, don't even keep a studio anymore. They just sit at home and
Wow.
go, nope, nope, maybe, maybe, nope. And because there's no feedback, then if you're that kind of person, you start self-doubting, like you think,
Yeah.
what am I doing wrong? And likely nothing wrong at all.
What do you
But
see this method? What do you see this method of harvesting talent doing to the industry over the next decade?
well, part of it is okay because so many shows, I find so many shows keep getting sort of geared down to a younger audience, right? Uh, but I mean, they still have to have parents and grandparents
Yeah.
and all that. So it's not like actors are getting, sort of culled out that way. But if you're a young actor like 16, 17, you're in the deep end of the pool. And you probably are likely to get discouraged by that much more quickly because you're not getting any feedback,
Yeah.
no matter how hard you worked. And you
Actors
just
need
spent,
this.
yeah. And if people spent 2, 3, 4 years in a program to learn their craft and then come out of there and can't apply their craft because there's no work giving that way, they're going to get discouraged pretty easily, I would think. And I find that sad because it used to be a much more wide open opportunity. There was definitely the competition, but the competition got harder because of you were getting feedback all the time. Whether you got it in the room or whether they called your agent and said, "Hey, we'd like to see your client come back in and do this again, but we'd like to see these changes." And like I say, unless they're calling you back specifically for a role, that just doesn't happen anymore.
And in the former circumstance, you're going in there, you're sharpening your knives as a performer. You're getting
Yeah.
more precise. You're getting different points of view in terms of feedback and in terms of assimilating that information to your specific skill set as a specific instrument in a larger orchestra. That's kind of wild. So taking it back to my original comment about teaching, it
Mhm.
must be very rewarding for you to be able to facilitate that one-on-one,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
sure you've
Yeah.
probably got a story or two of standout talent where it's like, that person blew me away. And yeah,
Oh,
I did help a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, as I say, well, that's the other thing. I didn't on my website, which is sadly so out of date now, but if any of your listeners want to check it out, it's www, of course, dot 77, the number, sunsetbeach.com. Sunset Beach, all one word. And in that, there's a scroll in there of all the actors' faces, or at least quite a number of them that I did coach. And so, yeah, it's been a terrific thing for me. I've worked with some really, you
Henry
know,
Thomas.
oh, Henry, oh my God.
What a life he has led.
No
I
kidding.
saw his documentary on After the Navigator. What
Oh
a
yeah.
guy.
He was so much fun to work with. In fact, we've kept in touch since then. But he had to do a British dialect on what was it? The House of one of the there was three House movies we did here. Oh no, Haunting of Hill. It
Hill
was
House?
Haunting of Hill House, and then Haunting of Bly Manor. That's the
Okay.
one I coached Henry on, and of course he he is quite a character, but a really nice, genuinely good guy. But he was having a lot of trouble with the dialect, so I would literally be about a half a foot off frame, and he'd do a line and then he'd go, uh, what is it again, Doug? What is it again? And I would do the line for him and he would repeat it and but yeah, he was great fun to work with.
Wow. And I actually need to, I misspoke. I mixed him up with Joey Kramer. I apologize, everyone. So,
Oh,
Joey Kramer was the Flight of the Navigator actor. Henry Thomas was
oh
E.T.
yes.
So that
Yeah.
was my bad. Wow. And Kit Harington. I mean, yeah, Ruby Rose. What a
Yeah.
list of talent, man.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I've been very fortunate to work with some, really terrific talent from outside and inside North America.
Wow.
So, yeah, Jeff Bridges was a character to work with, I'll
Oh,
tell you.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Hey, Doug, hey, well, Doug, we're gonna. Yeah, he was fun. He
Neil
was a lot of fun.
Jackson, he's a Stargate alum. We've had him on the show.
Yeah.
What a great guy. This is an impressive pool, and I'm happy to link this to the discussion.
Mm.
What is next for you? Is this what you're ensconced in? You're going to continue to do? Is there anything else you want to shout out before we let you go?
I don't know. I mean, right, like this summer, I decided basically to take the summer off.
Okay.
Well, although it seems odd to take the summer off to be involved with hockey, but my my daughter's hockey team at the end of their season, they wanted to put a team in this summer league, and so they said, "Hey, Doug, could you put the team in for us and coach us in the summer league?" And I thought, "Oh, yeah, So I did. And so it actually wasn't so bad because a couple of times a week I'd be going from hot, balmy, sunny weather
Yeah.
outside and going into a nice, cool arena for an hour and a half, So it had its
Yeah.
upsides too. But yeah, so now, well, actually, I just heard now that we're about to start. Well, they're supposed to release, and then when they do, we're supposed to start the second season of a show called Shaq's Garage,
Oh,
and it's an animated series. And
okay.
of course, you can maybe guess who the lead is.
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
A certain
yeah,
basketball player. So,
yeah. And of course, they're all vehicles.
oh,
And yeah, so I was Shaq's chauffeur. I'm a big green Bentley with a British accent, and so that was so much fun to do. And so I'm looking forward to doing another season of that.
cool.
And then now that we're into the fall and I'm not going to be outside as much anyway, then I'll probably maybe start looking at doing another series,
Mm.
coaching. Uh, and then I have an interest in an outside company as well that is just starting to really take off too. Totally outside the entertainment industry. In fact, you probably don't even know what a digester is, right?
No,
No.
other than the one inside my body.
Yes. Well, basically the same process, except never mind. But anyway, yeah, we uh,
A
we have
vessel
a
used to break down organic materials through chemical or biological reactions. There you
there
go.
you go. And what the end result of that is natural gas.
Are you talking to
Yeah.
the dairy farmer digester?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Dairy farmer digesters, although we did have our first conference with the city of LA, and they want to set up a street program where sort of similar, like they have their big bins for all their trash, but now they want them to separate organic trash and then that all going into a digester and then producing
Natural
natural
gas.
gas. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, my business partner in that came up with the concept, and so we've built
Wow.
our first four digesters in California so far. And of course, that's the kind of thing that is, very future oriented.
Hmm.
Everybody wants, and rightly so, to do as many green
Yeah,
projects as
sure.
possible. So. Yeah, so now, as it turns out, investor-wise, a number of athletes who I can't name,
Yeah.
but happen to be also professional basketball players, are very excited about the project and getting involved in the company. So that's kind
Wow.
of
That's
exciting too.
really
So
exciting. Yeah.
yeah, so so maybe rather than taking on another show, I'll just take on full-time retirement and hockey coaching. So it's
Well, and especially like those instances where you take the summer off. London's only going to be young for so long in doing this, and it's time well spent.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And the young thing, oh my God, yes, totally a young woman now as opposed to
Wow.
just a
Yeah.
young kid. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's fun, it's a lot of fun. As I said, she's quite talented in the hockey venue. And when she was, uh, let's see, when she was 11, she got called up to U15, which is like 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. And then when she was 14, she got called up to U18, which are
Yeah.
15, 16, and 17-year-old girls. So every time she'd say, Dad, those girls are so big. And I said, Yeah, but if you're faster than they are, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
she
You've been
is.
called to
So
this position. Someone's seeing
yeah, for a
something.
reason. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right.
So yeah, so she loves her hockey, and
Ah,
I've played hockey my entire life and still do and still love it. So for us, that's a great hanging out time.
absolutely. Doug, this has been tremendous. It's been such a privilege to get to sit down with you and talk with you about these roles and to finally make the connection. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Okay, good. Well, I want to keep going till 4 if you're okay with that.
I
No, I've
mean,
got
I've got another show.
no, I know I shouldn't be giving you a hard time on
No,
our
it's
first
funny.
meeting, but yeah,
This is great.
no,
I didn't know about the connection with Teryl. I can I ask you one thing before we go?
sure, yeah.
What is it? I'm getting the impression that she's getting more work now than ever. Every time I turn around, she is busier and busier, and it's amazing to see her so on fire. What do you think her X factor is?
Just personally, I think it's that broad range of characters that she can relate to out of different little sections of her own life. You know what I mean? Like some of the characters she plays are total badass characters, and believe me, she can play a badass. And but
Yeah,
but on the other hand, there's the mom,
the
the
nurturing Dr. Fraser.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. And what a great, ticket to ride that was. Like
Yeah,
that show as I say, she's still going to conventions
Right.
everywhere for Stargate from all that time ago, which is great. But yeah, she is really good at nailing the elements of a character that stand out, you know? So when I help her with her auditions, which are very frequent, and of course, now even though she's probably working more than 95% of the actors in
Yeah.
Vancouver, he thinks, "Oh my God, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything." And
Well,
I think,
sure.
"Well, wait a minute. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's back that off a little bit, So, but yeah, no, she's terrific at finding those little elements that stand out in an audition, which is the important thing. So,
I totally
you
see
know,
it.
yeah, and every once in a while she'll have one with a dialect, so then I get put to work twice. But
Right.
yeah. No, it's
Uh,
good. Like I said, she is a terrific actor, and Stargate probably was the thing that's given her more, well, she and London more global travel than
right.
anything, So yeah, it's
Yeah.
been great that way.
Blessings come along in all shapes and sizes,
They
and
do.
you
Yeah.
know, it's important to acknowledge and continue to uh, enjoy them like she is with the conventions. So, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
actors who won't do them, and she recognizes that the fans are a huge vessel for what continues to make this thing continue to
Yeah, and
resonate.
I
So,
think, she had a pretty long run on Virgin River as
yes,
well. And of course, now that they're finished, I think when you get so involved in something like that, and then you get to notice that this is our last season, it is kind of a letdown because it's no myth. Everybody says, well, when you're working on a show, it's kind of like a family. It's
mhm.
true. Like when you work on a show over anywhere past one season. And when you go back for the second season, wow, it's like, hey, how you doing? Da 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 da. Plus the people you kept in touch with in between, and yeah, it's a very well, and because you spend so many hours a day together,
More than your own family in many
yeah.
cases.
So it is definitely that
Yeah,
sort of thing. So yeah,
there you go.
but it's not for everybody.
Doug, this has been a
Yeah.
treat. I appreciate you taking the time, sir.
Well, it's been good fun. Like good thinking back on some of the stuff has been fun remembering it. So I appreciate you taking your time to listen to anything that I might have said with half an ounce of
Oh
intelligence.
no, this has been terrific. No ginkgo. Don't no need to drink ginkgo. Ginkgo, come on my show.
There we
So
go. Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the show on this end. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Take care, David.
Thank you.
All righty.
Doug Abrams, everyone, the Ori Prior, the one-eyed Ori Prior from Stargate SG-1, and the Colonan Langaran Commander Hale. You're watching Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoy content like this and you want to see more, please click like. It makes a difference with YouTube and will continue to help the show grow. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. In about an hour and a half, we are going to be starting Stargate Timekeepers Episode 2 with Simone Bailey and Jeff Gulka, Nicole Rodriguez-Galdo, and myself. Jeff has been playing the second level, and we're going to go through it live. So join us for a live playthrough and see if Jeff can keep from dying. My tremendous thanks to my moderating team, Tracy and Anthony, as well as Summer, Jeremy, Marsha. You guys keep the show going on the back end. Thank you all. My producer, Linda Gategabber Fury, and my webmaster, Frederick Marcoux over at Concepts Web. He keeps the show, the website going on the back end. We've got our next show coming up for you really soon, and I hope you stick around for it. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and I'll see you on the other side.